You're listening to the Laughing Couple podcast with your hosts, Brittany and Ryan Ostafy. Join them weekly as they discuss topics such as relationships, kids, sex, parenting, all unfiltered and all with a healthy dose of laughter. Please welcome your hosts, Brittany and Ryan Ostafy.
Okay, so today we're talking with Michelle Dempsey. I actually should have asked you this. Do you go by both last names before?
I go by Dempsey Multack.
I knew it. You said it was Dempsey and we were having it.
Well, it is on Instagram. So,
Yes.
I mean, you know.
He gets it. He gets a point.
But professionally, it's Dempsey Multack.
Well,
All right.
I'm embarrassed, and this podcast is 30 seconds
over.
in.
Okay, so Michelle, we're going to be talking a lot about divorce, which is really funny because we usually talk about all of the happiness in couples and relationships, but we were really interested in your perspective on this. You have so much going on. Can you just give our listeners just kind of a general background about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for deciding to talk about divorce on your podcast because, you know, the statistics don't lie. 50% of your listeners may head down the divorce road, and that's what I'm here for. So I am a former teacher. I became a divorce specialist and certified co-parenting specialist a couple years back, not long after my own divorce, when I realized there was a huge need for moms to have like on-demand help. You know, you get separated as a 40-year-old woman, 50-year-old woman, and there's plenty of support for you. There's books, there's groups, there's singles meetups, but you're 30, 33 years old, I was at the time, and you've got a 2-year-old, and you're like, holy crap, what now? And I realized by sharing my stories and my voice on social media that I was, you know, reaching a lot of people. So I was writing about divorce for a bunch of mommyhood publications. I was coaching. I have my podcast that speaks to all the same stuff. And then I wrote my book, Moms Moving On, Real Life Advice on Conquering Divorce, Co-Parenting Through Conflict and Becoming Your Best Self. Came out in March. And so I'm like a one-stop divorce shop over here.
Well, it didn't just come out in March. It's a bestseller.
Yeah, hello.
Thank you. Yeah, it was like for a hot minute. Now it's just like, you know, it's just there. But I'll take it. I will forever wear that badge.
See, that's the thing about being a best-selling author. You just need to be a best-selling author one time, and you're a best-selling author.
True.
Literally, I went and updated my LinkedIn, my bio on IG. My husband was like, "Don't you want to like wait a second?" I'm like, "No, this is fleeting." And I need to own it now.
You just need to send out cards to everyone you know. Hey, hope you're doing well. Also,
well, I went on Good Morning America a couple like months ago, and I remember getting on the plane to head home, and I was like, I've peaked. Like, it's all downhill from here.
No.
Like,
Get out of Are you kidding me? You're on the Laughing Couple podcast now.
I know. Well, yes, but you know that now it's all downhill.
You know, Good Morning America, Laughing Couple.
Okay.
We'll see where it goes now.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of Good Morning
J-Lo.
America. Before we...
Oh, yeah, J-Lo.
Hold on.
She's got a nice little video on Netflix now.
Yeah, I was actually watching that, the halftime behind the scenes. I love her. Before we get into the juicy stuff, we do a segment called I Love You and You're Annoying. We already explained it to you. Can you give us one thing that your husband does that drives you absolutely bonkers?
Current, not ex, not ex.
Yeah, current husband.
My current husband, who is an angel from the heavens,
Right.
and I adore, and he knows, and I say something probably every day. He's got this thing with his socks. I'll either find them balled up in between the couch cushions, or they just like accumulate in our bed.
Right.
And I wake up like clutching a sock and a pillow.
Sure.
And if it were up to me, I would just toss all the socks and he'd have to go sockless. But you know what? People sometimes can't change. And
Michelle, I know where this is going.
I can
know where this is going.
Severely relate to you.
Honest to God, Michelle, I wish you wouldn't have said that. I wish you would have said he was like I don't know, something else, because this is the thing that bothers my wife more than anything in the world. And I have to say, I understand where your husband's coming from.
No, you're just lazy. Like Ryan,
But like,
he hates
take off
socks.
the sock, leave it on the floor even. I don't care. But to ball it up and put it like in places that are not
they're
a hamper.
everywhere. Yeah.
And
No,
I have
get
to
it.
tell you, after spending time with my husband's extended family, it might be a hereditary thing.
Wow.
He's not alone in this problem. So I love you, honey, but we're going to have another conversation.
I love
later.
you, honey, but you suck.
And you saw. Well,
No,
it is
right.
hereditary, because I will tell you emphatically that both my daughter and son do the same thing that I do with the socks, and it drives my wife nuts.
All I do is pick up socks and like we lose them everywhere. They're in random spots. And then at one point I'm just like, you know what? I haven't found this pair, this match in X amount of weeks. I'm throwing it out. The next day I'll find it and I'm like, God damn it. And
But you
they're
know
just
what's-
everywhere.
You know what's worse about balling them up? Like if it were just normal, I could pick it up with like my fingernails. You have to like actually touch it before you put it in the hamper so that it gets clean in the wash. And that's a part of my life that is not my favorite.
You know what? There's a huge segment of people in the OnlyFans community that love feet. Maybe you should just post your husband's socks on that. It's a phenomenal way to offset your mortgage, I hear.
Well, yeah. I
Dirty
mean, now
sock
that
photos?
I've peaked and it's all downhill, I think I'm going to add that to the list.
Just start selling socks.
Yeah.
We used to have a sock bin on our stairs in our old house where like if I found random socks, we would throw them in the bin, and it did help. The sock bin just overflowed and then never got the matches. So
Honest to God, as a husband who cares deeply about my wife on most days, I don't know how it happens, and it just always happens. It's gotten to a point, Michelle, that I now am taking stock in the stuff that Brittany leaves around randomly, like her face wipes, just to offset the fact that I can't not have my socks lying around. I don't know. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, whoa, I don't even remember taking them off.
I can't. I don't. This is actually getting me so annoyed. I just even talking about it.
I'm like getting hot.
Sorry. Well, hey, listen, I'm the odd man out when it comes to the socks. I get that. And I'm the odd man out when it comes to here. This is mothers moving on. I happen to not be one of those. So I'll just escort my way out of here. I embarrassed myself at the beginning of the podcast anyway. So
Fine. I want to talk about, so you were on Good Morning America recently.
Yeah.
And the little clip that I saw.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yes, that's incredible. The little clip that I saw, you were speaking about how you feel like when you got divorced, there was like advice, like you were saying, like there was advice around for you, but you almost felt like it was dated. It was meant for a different generation, right? And I was like, I found that very interesting. Like, did you have, like, could you maybe bring up something that you had read or remembered that you were like, what? And then today, something that you would suggest instead. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm also a child of divorce, and my whole existence, my whole childhood was divorce. My parents' divorce took 10 years to finalize. So it started when I was 8 and was finishing when I was graduating high school. And my mom had these two best friends who were also divorced, and their favorite movie was The First Wives Club. And at the time, you know, I thought it was great and hilarious. And I remember after getting separated, my mom's like, you have to watch it. And I'm like, it's a demographic that would be our parents' age, right? And I'm like, this is great, but there's nothing like this where we can like laugh it off and connect about divorce other than Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce on TV, but nothing spoke to helping you through the legal process or understanding how to co-parent when your kids are so young. And so in my mind, I'm like, we would create the First Wives Club, like 2.0, with 30-year-old moms with toddlers and newborns, and, you know, go through every step of the process. But that for me was huge. And also when I Googled like divorce books, a lot of them were a little too prescriptive. It was like, you know, legal jargon, and I didn't feel seen is what, you know, I'm getting at. And I don't know. I think I was very lucky to have the platform already where I could speak to this and it would reach people through writing for like Scary Mommy and parents and whatever. And that really, like, no one was really doing that on social media at the time. I never set out to be a divorce influencer, but, you know, now here I am. And I think I helped bridge the gap between like feeling isolated on, you know, your own island as a young, recently married and now separated person, and the rest of the divorce community.
Hold on before, sorry, I just want to touch on something really quickly. Did you find it difficult maybe to, as you had these platforms and as you're speaking about things using your own experience, did you find it a little difficult to navigate because you're also speaking about your real life and like your ex's extended family and all of this? Like, was it a hard transition, or was it like, because we sometimes, like, when we have situations that we want to speak about, we want to hold back. We want to have some respect, but there's a lot of stuff that you know that you could give, but you're just like, ooh, is that too much?
And I know, for my daughter's sake, there's so much I wouldn't say, only because it's nobody's business. Like any interview that I do, I always say, like, I'm not going to talk about my ex or why we chose to get divorced. But I am very candid about the fact that, like, the divorce was not my ex's fault. Like, I was a hot mess in the relationship. I came into the relationship with all of this undealt with trauma, met this nice Southern boy and was like, hi, fix me. And when he didn't know what to do with me, I was like, well, then you suck, So it was that I've always been very open about that. But I think to anybody listening, the worst thing you can do, and I write about this heavily in my book, is go around town running your mouth about your ex. You are probably right. I'll say that. I will validate anybody listening who thinks their ex sucks. But your children don't feel that way. And your friends' children who may overhear their friends talking about the gossip at dinner are going to pick that up and then formulate their own opinions that may come back to your children. I think you have to be really discerning what you tell people, not because of your ex's emotions, but because of your children's. And people forget that when they're upset, It's human to want to, like, just be like, screw that person, he's the worst. But they're saying the same thing about you, and it's
it's so true.
Yeah, this brings up something that I didn't have as a question, but I think it just comes to me, so I'm gonna just run with it. When it comes to a spouse that wasn't ideal, and sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes there are divorces that are messy because there was one spouse who was just not a good human being.
Not picking up his socks, right?
Right, exactly. Like, that's where it starts, right? That's where it usually starts. But when you've dealt with trauma, and I'm not talking like physical trauma, but when your spouse is outwardly mean to you for an excessive period of time, there are a lot of people who stay in relationships probably longer than they should have. But when they finally break free of that and they get clear on that, their partner still exists.
Yes.
And they're still parents and they're still part of that. Do you ever think there's a time when it's the right time to tell your kids what you went through?
No. And I'll tell you why. Your children are a lot smarter than you give them credit for. They know who's who and what's what. Long before you separated, they were able to feel the energy of the unhappy parent and the one who frankly didn't give a shit. Are we allowed to curse? Sorry.
Oh,
we're allowed to fucking curse for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Shit balls,
I've been
whatever.
holding back a little bit. I'm like, oh, no. But kids, I always say to my mom, so my dad was a cheating bastard, like women all over New York City and the surrounding counties. And like, all I knew was that my parents were getting divorced because my dad had another girlfriend. I didn't know any details until well into my 20s when I was like, Ma, what the hell? And she said, I never wanted, I at that point was estranged from my father because he was who he was and he was a terrible dad. But my mom always said, I never wanted to be the reason why you didn't have a relationship with your father. I knew if I told you certain things, it would change how you felt about him. And you needed a relationship with him for however long it lasted. And so, no, I don't. I think there's a difference between honesty and bashing. But many children, even adult children, are not always ready to hear the truth about their other parent for that reason. They don't want to have a different view. There are certain things that, like, they don't need to know. And so I just assume unless your child comes to you and asks and they're of age to hear dirty details, let them have their relationship with their parent. Don't muddy the waters for them. They'll figure it out eventually.
I feel like that is like it makes so much sense. And I feel like every person, if they can, should absolutely abide by this. At the same time, I cannot imagine how hard and how difficult that would be as a parent, as a mom, if your ex was doing X, Y, and Z. And you do everything for your kids. You want to create and keep that vision of their father or their mother, whoever it is, like up on a pedestal, right? Because like you said, like what they did in your relationship shouldn't affect them. However, and we spoke about this, and this is kind of like a good transition. What happens? Actually, I talk about Father's Day and stuff because that was kind of your thing, and I really liked that. Like, are they responsible?
Yeah, like so. I'm glad you're allowing me to have this question because if you asked this question, I would have been like,
that wasn't mine.
So you work hard, you generate income, and your partner was not a good person, but it's their birthday or it's Father's Day, and their kids who are younger, who are not currently working, want to get their dad or their mother a gift. Do you get them the gift?
If they don't have another spouse.
And 50% yes. I did a video on this right before Father's Day, and people were like, thank you for setting me straight and putting me in my place. Because first of all, many of us don't have children with jobs or who can drive yet. And so like my daughter can't be like, see, I'm going to Target to get daddy a card. And I know that.
Yeah.
And I'm raising my daughter to be empathetic and kind and loving and embracing. And that includes loving her father, even if I don't. And so I have always been of the opinion, and I'll get people who like in my DMs, but you don't know what he did to me, and I will not let my child celebrate that person. And I'm like, that's fine. That's your choice. But it's a huge loss for your child to feel like I can't come to the one person on this planet I'm supposed to trust the most and ask them to help me celebrate. So I do believe that is your job. Now, there are many people who will also argue, but my ex doesn't do it for me. So what? You show your child. You show your child. I'm a firm believer in taking the high road. Like that's my thing. And just because someone else didn't treat you well doesn't mean you can't set the example for your child. So that's where I stand with that. I will always be available to my daughter financially and physically to help celebrate her dad, and that's what I think makes good co-parenting. It's not necessarily like I'm best friends with my ex. It's caring about your child enough to do the right thing.
Now, what happens if the partner was not only a terrible partner, but like a really shitty parent, a really shitty dad? Would you still be like... You
don't get them like a number one dad t-shirt or you're the best dad.
Like maybe just scribble out number one and write like, okay, mediocre.
I mean, if your child still has to spend time with this person,
you'd still do it.
I would let the child lead. Hey, do you want to get daddy anything for Father's Day? At least put it out there that you're willing to help. I'm not saying go to like Hermes and get him like a fancy pair of loafers, but even a handmade card, like, oh, you want me to cut that into a heart for you?
Right.
Let the child lead. If the child says, what do you mean dad sucks? I'm not, at least you put it out there.
You're like, you said it, not me.
Yeah, right. Well, that's when you don't say, yeah, I know he sucks, honey, but it's Father's Day. You got to just say, okay, superhuman restraint there.
Okay. Can you give us, let's speak about your book a little bit, Mom's Moving On. Can you give us, not without like, don't give your book away because obviously we want people to go read it. But can you give us a couple like golden nuggets, maybe things to like 100% avoid during divorce, and or some suggestions to kind of make co-parenting a little bit easier if you do have children?
Yes. Number one, don't rush the process.
Okay.
Most people are ignorantly in their bliss over the fact that they think if they get those divorce papers signed, their problems are over. It's bullshit. And if you rush it, you're going to make problems. You're going to cause problems for yourself. You're going to make emotionally charged decisions in your divorce process that will haunt you for the rest of your life, like not thinking through certain co-parenting parameters, not thinking through long-term choices for your divorce agreement. So number one is don't rush. Like, still going to be your ex a year from now, 6 years from now, whatever it takes. The other thing you want to do is learn to pick your battles. I always say when you're looking at your divorce agreement or your potential parenting plan, you have to sort of itemize your list. You have to have your tiers, your top tier non-negotiables, maybe pick 2 or 3. then like everything else, you know, you sort of have to assign a level of importance to it because you're not going to get everything you want. But if you choose to fight for every little thing, like, you know, dad ties his shoes on Tuesday, not me, like those things will cost you and will only amp up the conflict. Your divorce process, if you slow down, will be a lot less contentious, and that actual period of your life will determine what your co-parenting relationship is going to be like. So if it's hot and heavy and angry and you're just fighting back and forth, that's what your co-parenting life is going to be like. But if you take some time, chill the fuck out, let the embers, you know, burn, you're going to fare better. The other thing with co-parenting, honestly, like we deserve an award as co-parents. It is the hardest job in the world. You also have to learn to pick your battles and understand that all of your stress with co-parenting is rooted in control. It's the most unnatural thing to have to do. Give your children over to somebody you no longer like or love. But you have to have some faith and give up the control, the part of your brain that tells you, only I can do this right. They're going to be screwed up forever because dad gives them candy before dinner. You have to take a step back. That's the only way to not die from co-parenting.
Right.
It's funny. So I'm going to ask a question, but before I ask a question, this might sound like a silly question, but can you define co-parenting?
Yes. Co-parenting is not what most of us are doing, by the way. This is just the term we've assigned to divorced parents. Co-parenting means together, collaboration. We are collaboratively coming together to make the best decisions for our child. I tell every single one of my clients, you're not co-parenting in the first year or 2 or 3 of your divorce. You're parallel parenting, which means I'm over here, you're over there. We're both parenting in our own way, hopefully staying in our own lanes. And if we have to smile at each other at a baseball game, we will, but our relationship does not go further than that. True co-parenting are like the couples you see that are like, every Sunday we go for ice cream and then we take a family photo. And, you know, that does not happen for most people. And if it does, it doesn't happen for years. So co-parenting is the umbrella term that we use, just like we all use the term anxiety, and there's different levels of it. It's the same thing with co-parenting. The majority of us are parallel parenting.
That's really interesting because you're right. Like co-parenting, I feel like would be so hard to do. Again, like you said, with somebody who you don't like. And we just talked about control. Like we said, like how much control do you think that you are entitled to when you first start? So like you're dropping your kids off, right? Say your partner has a new girlfriend. And this might be one of your like, this is my non-negotiable. Your new partner doesn't meet the children until X. Like, what's the appropriate time there? Like, I would die because it is a control thing, but it's also you're safe. Like, you want your babies to be safe. Whoever is around them, they're like sponges, right? Like,
here's how I think about. I'm glad you bring up the other spouse because a lot of times a man will either will get caught cheating. Sorry, dude. And find solace.
I'm under the sock still, so
he'll get, you know, kicked out, or the relationship will end, and all of a sudden he's with this person, and now this fucker's bringing his mistress around the kids. So now not only is it like the pain of your children being around another woman, it's the woman who ruined your marriage. And oh my God. And so this happened to my mom. And again, I'll reference her because she's like the best. And she was always like almost too nice to my dad's girlfriend. And I would always be like, why are you so nice to her? And she'd be like, Michelle, daddy's not taking care of you. She is. She's got to be my friend. I want to know if you brushed your teeth. I want to know if you came home from school happy or sad. Your dad's not going to tell me that. She is. And so I always tell people, because everybody feels threatened when there's a new woman in the picture in their ex's life, it's actually good for your children. Men have a very hard time adjusting to parenting on their own, not because they're not able to do it, but because for a long time, us women with our controlling tendencies just came in and said, I'll do it myself, right? And so, you know, then you say, my husband doesn't do anything, but like, typically it's us who are like, just get out of the way, we'll do it. So dads need some time to get used to parenting on their own. And when there's another set of hands there, I think it's a blessing. And the more people who love your children, the better off they'll be in life. So that's a very emotionally evolved way to look at it, but you could still want to cut a bitch behind the scenes.
I feel like you could have those feelings internally and for a while, and then you'll get to a place where like, what's the thing they say in the South? Like, bless your heart, but they're really being like, go fuck yourself.
Fuck
like,
you. Yes.
yeah. That's kind of like that. That's what I feel like. I hope
100%
you have
that.
such a good day with
Go
my
fuck your
daughter.
mother.
Like, cheers. Yeah. Like, whatever. I love that.
Your mom, for the record,
Sounds awesome.
Can we just take a moment to pause and just, your mom sounds like an absolute angel.
Yeah.
She's the reason I think why I'm able to do the work that I do, to co-parent the way that I do,
Yeah.
and why I think most people would tell you I'm not crazy. You know, like no, but really, like my mom was an immigrant to this country. She married my dad after she met him in college. She came to the States for college, met my dad, thought, you know, okay, nice guy, getting married, makes a lot of money, life's going to be good. And it was anything but. And she was left with 2 children, an immigrant to this country. He was a disaster. Like I said, the divorce took 10 years, and she faltered, I'm sure, privately, but never in front of my brother and I. And she just kind of like was that phoenix, you know, that rose from the ashes and remarried and like has the best life and so much wisdom. And I know that it's because of her that I choose to take the high road and co-parent the way that I do.
That's honestly incredible.
Well, shout out to your mom.
Thanks.
For real. What's her name?
Her name is Margarita, but we call her Margie.
I love that.
Also in my home known as Gigi, because that's her grandma name. She had a hard time deciding what it was going to be. It was Nona for a while. Now it's Gigi.
Love it.
And she's my child's favorite person.
Gigi's close to my heart, so I love it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you, Gigi.
You guys on?
I do. I do have a question.
that's
Well,
right.
one of my favorite things that when going through your Instagram, and by the way, you've got such an unbelievable community that you've
Yeah.
built
Thank
and
you.
developed. And yeah, you should be extremely proud of that. It is shocking to me how many people gravitate to the conversation of divorce, but I guess it is, you know, you've already gone through the statistics, 50%. It is a common thing.
Even more so after COVID.
And more importantly,
60% in COVID, yep.
yeah, and more importantly, you stated that, like, and I think it's important to actually restate this, that the kumbaya co-parenting that you see on Instagram is not common.
No.
And and I mean this, you're a great human being, but the fact that you are as successful as you are and so many people are connected to you is proof that that's not a common thing. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're going through a divorce and it's not going smoothly,
You're not alone.
it sounds like you're not alone.
I think it's so unfair for anybody right out of the gate who, you know, has this pressure on them that they have to like have this relationship with their ex. Like, you may be really hurt. You may not be ready for that kind of a relationship. And to think that like that's the only way to co-parent well really isn't fair. And I don't know. I like to keep it as real as I can. I know that my parents were terrible co-parents, but I had what Harvard research and science has proven, one stable caregiver, which is enough to thrive. And if that's the best you can do, then you're doing a great job.
And that's really when you come to taking the higher road, higher ground, as long as one of you is doing that, then your child has a higher success rate.
Yeah.
So what I love, and this is what I was going to get at, what I love is in one of your posts, you talk about managing expectations. If your partner was not ideal in your marriage, to assume that partner is going to be ideal outside of your marriage doesn't make
understand.
sense.
I don't like, he brought the kids late again. I'm like, was he timely in your marriage?
Yeah.
No. I'm like, well, then you know what you're dealing with.
Are you
right?
drunk?
Like, he doesn't become punctual Pat just because you got divorced. Like
Right.
and I think managing expectations also comes from like having to honor certain truths, right? Like, you can't play victim if you are truthful with yourself, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't know why this marriage ended. I'm so hurt. Well, you know why it ended. He or she sucked, and like they're gonna suck forever in your eyes, right? So
Right.
managing those expectations is huge, because if you're expecting this person to abide by every line of the parenting plan and like praise you for your parenting efforts, they're not going to do that. And they don't have to do that for you to know that you're a good parent and you're doing the right thing. So detaching from that expectation and the validation you think you need from your ex is huge. That's the only way to move on.
that really flows to what you spoke about, is having both people in a divorce. Both people are entitled to what they think went wrong, and they're right in their own mind. But you also said you don't have to prove your partner wrong to justify that your feelings are valid. Can you speak? I was like, that is so good, because it's hard.
Thank you. A lot of people didn't like.
I think I don't think that's
that.
just a divorce thing. I think that's an argument
Absolutely.
thing inside a marriage. I think what you're about to discuss can actually work for people who are in a marriage right
Yes. Right. I think this need to get people to see things the way we see things in order for us to feel justified is not, it's just not healthy. Like, I gave the example of, if I go to the beach with my friend and I get sunburn and she doesn't, which one of us is right in saying that the sun is too strong, or was the sun not strong, right? Like, everybody lives different experiences within the same life. My brother and I had two totally different childhoods as brother and sister, because he had a relationship with my dad and I didn't. People have completely different experiences in their relationships together. And I just saw that little nudge. Is he getting in trouble?
No. Technically
I have notes here.
I know, but usually we do one of these, like.
She's telling me she's telling me that my notes are coming up too high.
When you're like this, she doesn't know that you're doing notes.
You guys are just such a fun dynamic.
I want to make sure I get my question
We
answered.
will also call each other on our shit all the time, so this isn't.
Love it. It's so
not
good.
Out of the ordinary.
But
now I'm
if
double embarrassed.
if you meet a man and say, why'd you get divorced? He's going to say, oh, my ex is crazy. And if you meet a woman and say, why'd you get divorced? She's going to say, oh, my ex was a narcissist. Like, everybody has that same rhetoric, that same narrative, that same belief system. And it's because we all experience things differently. So I do believe, and a lot of people got mad about that post because they're like, well, my ex-husband was abusive, so there's no other way to see it. Of course, I side with you. If he's abusive, fuck him, you're right. I still think you're right, even if he wants to prove that you're wrong, right? Yeah. But in his mind, he's going to say, A, I didn't do that, or B, it wasn't as bad. Everybody's going to have their own, and let them have it. Like, I'm not going to die trying to fight somebody else's opinions of me or change their mind. Like, if you want to believe it, believe it. If you want to tell me the sky is green, fine, whatever. I can't argue your perception of things.
Right. You just want to separate. Like, I think that you're right. It does apply to any relationship as well, especially I always thought that I dated a really terrible person. And for a long time, it's not you.
I'm waiting.
And for a long time, he was very narcissistic and pathological. And I always I felt the need to say, it's not me, it's you. This was on you. And at the end of the day, I was like, I am never going to change his mind. He's not okay. So why do I have to? I just need to get away from that. But that is so much easier said than done. It's a hard thing to separate your feelings from validation. To be yep, you were right here. It's hard to do.
But that's why you go to therapy. And that's why you hire somebody like me, because I am going to validate your part of the experience 100% because you lived it and it affected you the way that you did. I hate when people say to other people oh, you're too sensitive. I used to get that a lot growing up. I am sensitive, but I feel things on a deeper level because I've experienced trauma. So you can't tell me that this experience wasn't as bad as it would be for you. It was bad for me, whatever the experience is. So yeah, you have to have other people in your life that you seek validation from, because you're never going to get it from your ex. It's just not possible.
Now, we've talked about this numerous times. There's a difference between validating and igniting those feelings. Can we talk about that for a second? Because there are a lot of people in this world that I could go to, that you could go to with problems, that would take those problems and literally make them a massive, massive problem.
You're talking about closure and loyalty and who you're
That's
speaking.
called the shark attorney. And that's what you don't want. No, I think what you're saying, there's a difference between validating and instigating or encouraging, right? So I first learned of the powerful concept of validating people's emotions from being a parent and working with, my child's therapist, who would say things to me like, you have to validate how she feels, but then redirect her to something a little bit more logical. So I'm so sorry you can't pour the chocolate syrup over your head. I know that makes you feel so sad that you can't do that. Igniting or like feeding into the behavior would be like, yes, pour it over your head, make yourself happy.
Yeah.
You would say, I know it makes you sad you can't do this. However, why don't we pour it into a bowl or onto our ice cream where it belongs, and then we can still enjoy it. It's the same thing with validating somebody's emotions. I see this makes you really upset. And I use that phrase, even with, like, if I have to interact with my ex and tell him something he may not want to hear. Hey, listen, I know this is a hard subject for you. I know you don't like to talk about this. However, and just making somebody feel heard. It doesn't change the outcome of what the situation is, but it really helps disarm a person without enabling them.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Well, you talked about having this. I can't remember what the movie was. They're all in the white. At the end of the movie? They're all dancing. It's the movie your mom told you to watch.
Oh, the First Wives
Oh, the
Club.
First Wives Club.
I know we all want this community and what have you. This is where I want to get when it comes to this is, we all want that night where we have a couple of drinks with our girls and we just unload on all the shit that's going on. But I think you've got to be very selective with the people that you talk to when it comes to this. There's one thing to have that conversation once, but if that's the ongoing conversation, I don't think it serves you.
No.
So in your experience, how far does that go before it's now toxic for you?
So I once posted something and people loved it. It was like, just a reminder, stop sending your friend pictures of her ex on social media. Like, she doesn't want to see what he's doing, and this is only hurting. You're like throwing salt in the wounds.
Right.
Like, it's one thing for me to sit down with my best friends and be like, can you believe what this motherfucker said? But then if every time I'm with them, they're going to bring it up, like, it's going to take me back. It's going to be, and then you have to start to question, why is this the only thing they want to talk about? And I write about friendships after divorce in great detail in my book, because it's one of the biggest like second divorces within the divorce that we have to face sometimes. And you realize that some people, it's like a misery loves company type of thing. Those people who gravitate to you the fastest and are like, tell me everything. And I had my own situation with that. And as soon as I was happy, that person was like, okay, bye. They wanted nothing to do with me. So I think it's perfectly fair to set a boundary with your people. Like, I'm telling you guys this, but I don't want to bring it up again. It's exhausting to talk about. And that's it. If they can't respect it, then they're not your people.
I think I want to end with this. So we have an interesting dynamic. I have two friends in my life who are both. The one friend is like literally like the epitome of a divorce. Her and her ex-husband are like the best co-parents. They're best friends. Like, they really are not the norm of who you would look at to have a divorce, right? Like, they are not someone to look up to and right away, because it's just not attainable for most people. And then on the other hand, I have another friend who is like about to be divorced. She's going through like the thick of it, but her ex is not a great person. He's not a good person. I'm just going to put it that way. And for her, she is sad, and it just made me think of this, because you said it's okay to feel sad about a loss. Like, if you're getting divorced, even if this person has been a dick to you for X amount of years, it is still okay to feel sad about losing that relationship. And she was like, I have to reel it in, because she was like a little bit talking about with all these people, and now they're angry with her. Sorry. They're angry with her because she's a little like, she's like, certain things are still making her sad. And they're like, why? He's such an ass. Because it's a loss. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
I can't believe you're still crying over him. He was such a dick. Well, you know what? Divorce is one of the most difficult life changes after death. Like, it's hard. Even if you want it out of the marriage, your whole world shifts.
Right.
Your financial situation, how you parent your children, your social circles, everything is affected. There's collateral damage. And so I think it's so unfair, to assume that, like, just because something was bad, you're not allowed to be upset over it. Like, earthquakes are bad, and you can be upset over it for a long time because there's a shitstorm to clean up afterwards, So, yeah, I think people are well-meaning, but they don't really. It's like when people say, I'm so sorry about your divorce. That's literally how I open up my book, is with a conversation I had with one of my mom's friends in a coffee shop. And she's like, I am so sorry about your divorce, here in like Miami.
Ooh, yes.
And I looked at her and I was like fired up that day for whatever reason. And I was like, are you? Because I'm not. And let me tell you why. And my mom, who's like, my mom, I was like, Michelle, can't you just pretend to be upset? You're embarrassing me. I was like, I will not pretend,
No one will shelter me. That's amazing.
People are well-meaning. They just don't know what to say.
It's true.
And I think that's a good way for us to, because you said that half of the listeners here that are listening to this are likely to get divorced and the other half are
God
not.
forbid. I'm just saying it's statistics.
Right.
So if we're the other half and we're talking to the other half who's getting divorced, what do you say?
I think you say, how can I be helpful? I know this is a hard time for you. I'm proud of you for doing a hard thing. How can I be helpful? That's it. And to people who are listening who have friends going through a divorce and need to know how to best support them, invite them to things. Don't assume that because they're not part of a couple that they won't want to come on your Saturday night, couples night. And don't assume that because they're so strong that they don't need a phone call and they don't need somebody checking in. That's the best thing you could do is just even if they're going to say no, make them feel included so they don't feel ostracized.
That's great. I like that. Okay. Can you do us a favor and just link all of your socials and then tell everybody where they can find your book and any
I'm
of your
at
courses?
the Michelle Dempsey on Instagram. My podcast is Moms Moving On. The book is Moms Moving On. It's sold at every retailer. You can work with me by emailing me, info@momsmovingon.com. Check out my courses, my workshops, momsmovingon.com. I'll be on Good Morning Washington in a couple of weeks. Just making the rounds, trying to sell my book.
I love it. I love it.
A lot of people in the process.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle. This was so fun. Not
you.
fun talking about divorce, but I enjoyed the conversation.
It was fun. You guys are great. Thank you.
Well, just so you know, I'm gonna recap this really quickly. The last thing that I read, my last note, you answered, and your response was "Wow." So aren't you glad I read that note?
Oh my God, you were fine, but I just wanted you to put it down.
Yeah. Okay.
He needs the validation.
Yeah, I need validation.
Go pick up your socks.
I didn't feel heard until then.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.
There goes a sight from my soul.